Introduction. Can a simple mistake change the map of the world? Although it sounds incredible, this has happened more than once in history. From misdrawn lines on maps to diplomatic misunderstandings, some countries owe their existence to mere blunders. Today, we will tell you the story of an error so impactful that it led to the creation of an entire country. The line that should never have existed. Our story begins in the 19th century, an era marked by territorial expansion and the redefinition of borders. In 1821, following independence from Spain, the new nations in Latin America faced the challenging task of delineating their territories. Among them were Honduras and Nicaragua, two young nations with a shared border that was a constant source of dispute. To resolve their disagreements, both nations turned to expert European cartographers. However, at that time, maps were not as accurate as we know them today. They relied on accounts, incomplete drawings, and inaccurate measurements. Then the mistake occurred. When drawing the borderline, the European cartographers accidentally placed a strip of land, known as Mosquitia, as an independent territory. This strip did not belong to either Honduras or Nicaragua, and although nobody knew it at the time, this small cartographic slip would sow the seeds for a completely new country. Chapter 2: A Paradise Without an Owner. For decades, Mosquitia remained a sort of no man's land. While official maps showed the error, the governments in the region either didn't notice it or ignored it, too busy with other disputes. But the situation changed in the late 19th century when British explorers began arriving in the region. For the British, Mosquitia was a strategic paradise, rich in natural resources like precious woods, and with direct access to the Caribbean. This unclaimed territory was an irresistible opportunity. Wasting no time, they began settling in the region and trading with the local indigenous communities, particularly the Miskitos, who already inhabited the area. It was then that Mosquitia began to acquire a unique identity. Influenced by British customs and local culture, it became a place distinct from both Honduras and Nicaragua. And here is where the initial error started to take shape into something bigger, a nation in the making. Chapter 3: The Proclamation of the Miskito Kingdom. In 1860, the cartographic error had an unexpected consequence. The Miskito Kingdom was officially proclaimed as an autonomous territory. Although it was not internationally recognized, the Miskitos began to govern themselves under a symbolic monarchy, largely backed by British merchants. Their king, George Augustus Frederick II, became the leader of a territory that technically should not have existed. This small kingdom was a political anomaly. It was not completely separate from Honduras or Nicaragua, yet it was not under their control either. As the Miskitos asserted their independence, the Miskito Kingdom developed its own economy, based on the trade of woods and Caribbean products, and adopted unique cultural traditions blending indigenous and European elements. But this autonomy was not to last forever. For a time, it seemed that this small error had transformed into a de facto independent country. Chapter 4: Confusion, Conflict, and Consequences. By the end of the 19th century, both Honduras and Nicaragua began to note that Mosquitia had become an independent political and economic actor. Both countries claimed the territory, arguing that the error on the maps did not justify the Miskito Kingdom's existence. The situation became tense, with threats of military intervention. Meanwhile, the Miskito Kingdom sought international support to remain independent. However, the British, who initially supported the kingdom, began to withdraw from the region due to diplomatic pressure. The lack of solid backing left the Miskitos vulnerable to the governments of Honduras and Nicaragua. In 1894, the Miskito autonomy came to an end when Nicaragua invaded the territory and officially annexed it. Although the Miskitos retained some cultural autonomy, their brief existence as an independent country was buried by regional politics. Chapter 5: The Legacy of the Error. Although the Miskito Kingdom no longer exists, its history remains a reminder of how mistakes can lead to extraordinary events. Today, the Mosquitia region remains a unique territory with a cultural identity deeply rooted in its past as an independent kingdom. As incredible as it may seem, it is not the only case where an error has changed the history of countries. From poorly drawn borders to accidentally signed treaties, these types of blunders show us that history does not always advance according to a plan, but often takes unexpected turns that no one could foresee. What do you think about this incredible story? Do you believe that a simple error could create a country again in the future? Leave us your comments and don't forget to subscribe to discover more fascinating stories from our history. Because sometimes mistakes are not the end, but the beginning of something new.